This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, welcome back to Invest Like a Pro. This is Joe Rabil. Hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. And today we're going to talk about the stock market. I want to give you an update on the S&P and the market conditions. And I guess the question that needs to be addressed here is this push to the upside. Is it a bearish thing or is it a bullish thing? So I want to focus on that today as we go through all the different indications that we look at. All right, let's go ahead and get going. One thing I do want to mention is that if you have an interest in learning more about my approach, my methodology, I would suggest starting with the book. I'm making it available at a discount right now in an ebook format. So if you go to rabilstockresearch.com/book, you can find out that information. Okay, as always, as we start the market conditions, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. Now, the sentiment this week did climb a little bit. There were a few more bulls and just a smidge less bears, so not a significant difference. Last week it was 28%, this week 30%. The difference between the bulls and the bears being the positive side. So it's working its way up, but I would say, we need to get up towards that 35 to 45% area, the difference, before we start to get too concerned. I would say over 40 is where it's really very concerning, where it's, probably up in the mid 30s. It could be, depending on how overbought we are, could be some type of a short-term concern. But we've been kind of oscillating inside of we've been going from positive and negative, but we haven't gotten any extreme readings in the sentiment in a while. So we'd be on the lookout for that, and as time goes on, but it can take time. So it has turned a little bit more bullish, or people are getting a little bit more bullish, which is actually a negative. We want to watch we're contrarian with this indicator, so we're looking for that to push a little bit higher. Again, I use the Investors Intelligence Sentiment Survey, the bull bear spread. All right, overbought, oversold oscillator. If we look at the weekly chart here, the 5 RSI has jumped from, it was down around like 18 down at the low, and now it's up to 73 up above, right? So we've gone from oversold to overbought. Now, in a way, that's kind of bullish, right? Because we did it off of a key support zone and we showed so much strength that we went immediately into overbought territory. Don't assume because we're overbought that this is the end of the run, all right? That's not how that works. If you make an uninterrupted move like that, and we did it on both time frames, we were down at 18 and then we pushed straight up into overbought. That's a sign of strength, especially when you're coming off of a key support area. So, we are overbought though, and so I'm putting that in the negative camp on the weekly. It does qualify as a negative. What I'm trying to tell you is that it's more of a condition than a setup. It's not like I'm shorting because it's showing that it's overbought. All right, you don't think that way. You look at it in terms of the condition. Now, I think one of the key conditions that we want to be looking at here is the volatility, because we've seen in the last, as this is pushed higher, the size of these bars has not grown at all. It's the volatility has shrunk, and that is causing the average true range to drop below its moving average. So this is now in the positive camp. I mean, crystal clear that that's rolled over. In fact, I think it was last week, but now it's really clear. The weekly is still above the moving average, but the moving average is declining. All right, so you can't put that in the negative camp. It's still neutral. I actually think by next week, potentially next week, it's going to drop back into the positive camp because it's not turning upward. The size of these bars are not growing. And this week, because of the holiday week, I mean, it's possible it could be a big up week, but the odds are it's going to be a smaller range week. And by default, that's probably going to drop this back down again. So that's sort of what I'm expecting. Now, just so you can see it a little bit more clearly, here's the weekly with just the average true range and its moving average. You see how this is clearly still declining. It's not declining at the same rate that it was, but it is still declining. So we don't want to jump the gun here. We're looking for this type of pattern. If we're looking for something to be concerned about, we want to be looking for this to be turning up while this line holds and turns up like that. So if we get that to take place, which this did at the peak, that would be concerning. So we got to watch and see if it develops that way. I think this is a much different, this here looks a lot different to me than what's going on here. All right. So not necessarily expecting this to develop, but we do got to keep on the lookout for that. All right, let's switch over and start talking about the individual trends. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but I did switch the monthly trend back to positive. It is above. Now, normally I would wait for the end of the month, because just keep in mind, if this drops down by the end of the month and gives it up in the next week in a pretty significant way, it's possible this won't be rising anymore. But just looking at the way this played out, it's operating off of a pinch play. I thought that it made sense that I'd switch this because it looks like these moving averages are now rising. So they're not rising like, parallel like that. I mean, this is a true bull trend when you have this with the moving averages. But in terms of qualification here, I would say we're above 2 moving averages, which are now rising, and they acted as support on the last pullback. And we do have the pinch play. Now, you might be wondering why I did not switch. Because it's a pinch play and it's triggered, why wouldn't I have switched the momentum to positive as well? And my reasoning is that we just don't have enough DI strength here. I'd like to see more improvement in the DI. Now, it doesn't have to go above 25, but I'd like to see it make a higher high here. I think we could be on the way to doing that. But as long as the ADX is low, we could make a move on this time frame that's considered to be positive, a positive move, and never really get this to be what I would consider to be truly confirming based on momentum. So right now I'm treating it as a monthly trading move, right? In the 2 to 4 months, we have a potential of 2 to 4 months. So this is November, December, maybe early into next year. If we don't see enough improvement here, then we just treat it as a monthly trading move. That's how I would be, at least that's how I'd be reading it. All right, so let's look at the weekly chart. We've made a dynamic move off of key support. We've talked about this level, 4,200, over and over again. It was 41, 42, some in that zone. We got down, the MACD got down to this level. We did not have a lot of selling strength to cause the ADX to go up. So we knew the bulls were in command on this time frame still. Even though this red popped up, it dropped right back down as this turned up with this big green bar. But more important to me is that when this was moving up, this was really pretty low and flat. It wasn't turning up to any significant degree. So I don't know if you remember, you could go back and look at what I was saying when we were down in this level. I'm saying I'm just not looking for a big move to the downside, just based on what was taking place here, the way this was trading like this, and the fact that we had so much underlying support from both the 18-month and the 40-month and all the price support along with the fib levels. So now that's a little different than saying that we're expecting this to explode like it did, right? I mean, people got very bearish right at the low. It was very unique. Normally it's more of an attrition to the downside. This was kind of like everyone threw in the towel at the same time, and the cash levels raised at that time as well, meaning more people raised cash, especially money managers. And I think that has helped this rally. And I think it continues to help this rally. They're still trying to get invested. They don't want the market to finish off the year on an up note and them not be there. Now, let's start talking about whether this is a bullish thing or a bearish thing. Obviously, based on what's taken place and the underlying trend and the strength of what's taken place here, and the fact that we are seeing a little bit of DI improvement, we have to sort of look at this as a bullish development, not bearish. I mean, I would have to be making something up to call this bearish. I can't call it bearish. At least I can't invent a way to call it bearish right now. I mean, yeah, I could argue that it doesn't have a massive amount of trend strength right now, okay? But we're starting to see that, and it always starts on the small time frame. I mean, look at the strength that's been taking place since the beginning of November. The hourly kicked in and has been really very, very powerful. This whole move has been incredibly strong based on the ADX. Now, after that first leg, we started to see some improvement on the daily chart. And now look at how it's being reflected in the ADX on the daily. You can see the volume bubbling as well. Look at this, the way this has played out. This is not a stampede. It's a stealth bull action. This is very bullish what's taking place. Now, the volume's drying up here because it's in the holidays now. Not everybody showing up this week. But this, to me, is a very bullish sign because, again, it goes back to what I've been talking about. People being left behind, using any weakness at all to try and enter, any weakness trying to get in. This is what it looks like to me when I look at this. This actually is now starting to look like, okay, they sold it off, it rallied, and then here at the low was almost a climax bottom in a way because of the way that played out. Now, it's not your classic climax, and I was looking for a climax even on the really smaller term time frames where we get a big explosion of volume and everything, and it just didn't happen that way. But with that said, the strength to follow, I think, needs to be respected. So we've got a daily chart that is clearly bullish. Price is above the 18 and the 18 is above the 40, and both lines are rising. Now, I switched the momentum to bullish too because look at what MACD and ADX are doing. I mean, I can't argue with these. These are facts. And the only thing that's really negative about this setup right now is that we are stretched away on the upside. See how we were stretched away on the downside? The funny thing is that if you do the math and you look at how far away we got to the downside, it was about 15 points. We're about 15 points to the upside, and we have been kind of lingering around 15 points above. So we should be on the lookout for some kind of a pullback when you get this kind of stretch. There's this opening air pocket. We should be looking for some kind of a retracement or something like that. But the thing is that negative, or is that just going to re-energize guys that get the opportunity to put more money to work? I'm in that camp where I think that a pullback is going to lead to more upside right now, based on what I'm seeing in the strength, based on what I'm seeing in the volume activity. And just based on the persistence of the move to the upside, typically your first pullback after a persistent up move like that is a viable one. And we want to be on the lookout for that, but it's probably not coming until next week. Just based on the fact that, well, it's, first of all, Friday is just a couple hours. And then when we look at the holidays, it's typically we just don't expect a big drop. And historically speaking, that week is a positive week. So taking all this into account, I think we want to be watching that RSI 5 on the daily chart and see if it can't come down to neutral or maybe a little bit better. And that should, if that plays out that way, maybe next week or something like that, that should represent a lot of, there should be some pretty decent opportunities out there. All right. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and we'll see you next time.